Hello and welcome to the Classical Guitar Practice Room. I'm James Caldwell, and in this video we are looking at Ferdinando Carulli's Waltz in 3 Variations, and specifically Variation 1. I'm playing this out of the Shearer Classical Guitar Technique book. Now, if you're not familiar with the waltz yet, get the sheet music and go back and watch my previous video where I cover that first movement in detail. This variation takes the same chord structure established in the waltz and applies different arpeggio patterns to those chords. Let's just take a look at the first line here. The first line is comprised of just C chords and G7s, as in the waltz. If you look at the first line, you'll notice that every other note is G on the 3rd string, open. The right hand fingering given at the beginning of the first measure is PIA. That's telling us that the thumb will play the bass note, the index finger will play the 3rd string, which in this line is always that open G, and the A finger will play the 1st string. We will use PIAIA through the first 3 measures because the strings involved here are the 3rd string for the I finger and the 1st string for the A finger. So let's take a look at these first 3 measures. Begins with the C chord, and actually all you have to do is put your 3rd finger down on the 5th string to get that bass note out. Then we have an open G and an open E. So here we go. P-I-A-I-A-I. Next measure is the G7. All you have to do is put your 1st finger on the 1st string F, and the thumb now plays D, the 4th string. Again, that's P-I-A-I-A-I. 3rd measure is that C again, like the 1st measure, with P-I-A-I-A-I. Now in the 4th measure, we have a B in the bass and a D on the 2nd string. So we're switching our right hand fingering to P-I-M-I-M-I. 5th measure, we're back to the C chord again, P-I-A-I-A-I. 6th measure, it's the G7 with just F on the 1st string, P-I-A-I-A-I. And 7th measure is this B in the bass and D on the 2nd string, P-I-M-I-M-I. And the final measure of that line is 2 C's. So what we're doing here in the first line is we're keeping the right hand in the home position where the thumb will play the bass note, whether it be on the 5th string or the 4th string. The I finger will always play the 3rd string. The M finger will always play the 2nd string when necessary. And the A finger will always play the 1st string when necessary. So here is the first line. So the first line is very straightforward, no unusual fingerings here. And the first line also has a repeat, so you would play it twice. As I mentioned in the previous video on the waltz, whenever you have to repeat a passage of music, it is common practice to play it once with the right hand up over the sound hole closer to the fretboard for a more mellow tone, and on the repeat to draw your hand back closer to the bridge, not all the way to the bridge, but a little bit closer to it, and get a brighter, thinner sound. And that will vary the color of the tone and make it more interesting for anyone listening. On to the second line here. As in the waltz, we get our first bass note on the 4th string. It's F with the 3rd finger. Now here we're going to be using a right hand fingering of P-I-M-I-M-I. It's not printed here, but it's what makes sense. So first measure, we have F with the thumb, and then G with the I finger, and B with the M finger, first measure. 2nd measure, we go down to E on the 4th string, and we add C to the 2nd string, still P-I-M-I-M-I. 3rd measure, we have D in the bass, and now we're going up to the first 2 strings. We could switch the right hand fingering here to be P-M-A-M-A-M. I prefer to play the whole line all the way through with P-I-M-I-M-I. So here in the 3rd measure, D in the bass, B, F, B, with I-M. 4th measure, we have a C chord Still playing the first two strings here, so P-I-M-I-M-I. Fifth measure, we're back to that F in the bass and the open G and B strings. Sixth measure, it's the E in the bass and C on the second string. Seventh measure, D in the bass with F on top and the first two strings. And the last measure of this line, the octave of C's there. So to recap this second line, I play the entire arpeggiated pattern with P-I-M-I-M-I, whether it's the second and third strings or the first and second strings. I just keep it consistent with the right hand here. So here is the second line. Now onto the third line, and as in the waltz, in these last 8 measures, the chords switch to A minor and E, or E7, and the idea here is a little different. The right hand fingering in the first measure is given for every single note, so it's quite specific here. The thumb will play the first bass note, of course, and then we have I, M, I, and we have a P. The thumb is going to come up to the third string where we're playing an A. So the thumb in each of these measures will be going back and forth from the lower bass note, 5th string, to the 3rd string. And the second measure is the same as the first. So here's the first 2 measures of line 3. In the third measure, we have an E in the bass, 6th string open, D on the second string, open E, then a G sharp on the 3rd string, again played with the thumb. So that's P-I-M-I, P-I. Fourth measure is back to the A minor, and it's like the first measure, but it cuts it short. It stops once the thumb plays that A on the 3rd string. The 5th and 6th measure here is just like the first 2. It's the A minor, with the thumb rocking back and forth between the 5th string and 3rd string. 7th measure is that E in the bass, but this time it's an open B string as the second note. G sharp, B, and the line ends with an octave of A's. So this passage right here is really quite interesting, and I think it's fun to play with the thumb rocking back and forth between the lower bass note and the 3rd string. Here is the 3rd line. So just watch out for the difference between the 3rd measure and the 7th measure. 3rd measure has that D on the 2nd string. 7th measure just has a B. That's an easy one to miss because at a glance it looks to be the same and you might just want to play the same thing, but there is that one note that's different. As in the waltz, the arrangement has us repeat each line, and then with the instruction at the end, the D, C, Al, fine, we go back to the first measure, we play the first line, ignore the repeat, play the second line, and finish. That's all I have to say about this first variation of Carulli's Waltz in 3 Variations, as found in the Shearer book. If I missed something, let me know. And stay tuned for the upcoming videos where I will cover Variation 2 and Variation 3. Thanks for tuning into my channel today and watching this video. If you did find it informative, helpful, or even amusing, I'd appreciate it if you gave me a thumbs up and if you would subscribe to my channel, and stay tuned for more classical guitar related videos. I look forward to seeing you next time here in the Classical Guitar Practice Room. Until then, I've been James Caldwell.